Discover how a single dad CEO's blind date transformed into an unexpected journey of love and kindness. Jacob had never quite believed in chance encounters, but as he peeked at the clock in his sleek downtown office, the intermittent thrum of anxiety rippled through his chest. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was counting on him to return home early. Yet here he was, caught up in back-to-back meetings, and the deadline loomed like a dense fog. The startup was thriving, its trajectory soaring like a comet, but at what cost? Nothing ever felt quite as important as those fleeting moments he shared with his daughter. The weeks blurred into months, and isolation crept in like a thief in the night. He'd buried himself in spreadsheets and numbers, consolidating his world into data points, desperate to protect the modest family unit left behind after his wife walked away. Today, however, marked something different. Egged on by his well-meaning colleague, he had reluctantly agreed to a blind date. Expectations low, he envisioned awkward small talk punctuated by guilt for abandoning his little girl at home. The tension between his ambition and the family duties clashed, thickening the air around him. What would she see in him? The frazzled CEO juggling a whirlwind of responsibilities, or a man yearning for connection but terrified of vulnerability? As Jacob slipped into the cafe, his breath hitched. Across the room, Sarah smiled, her warmth cutting through his lingering doubts. They exchanged pleasantries, though his mind raced. Would sharing his burdens ultimately push them apart? Discussing the challenges of parenthood felt risky, exposing wounds he had worked hard to shield. Even as she animatedly shared stories about her students, their hopes and struggles, Jacob's heart pounded with an almost desperate longing. Here was someone who understood the weight of being a single parent, yet he felt a chasm of fear open beneath him. What if the connection collapsed when his truth came to light? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The conversation deepened, but so did his inner turmoil. Jacob could almost feel the echo of his past swirling ominously around them, the memory of betrayal, the rumors surrounding his former partner. What if it surfaced? Would it ruin everything? Just as he started to contemplate the possibility of a real relationship, a familiar dread seeped in, tightening around him like a vice. He had built walls to protect himself, but even now, an unexpected voice in his thoughts whispered that these walls might be suffocating instead a reflection of his own fears. The air was charged when an urgent phone call disrupted the fragile web connecting their realities. It was a number he dreaded, his legal team. For several heartbeats, Jacob's body tensed, muscles rigid with panic. Would this be the moment that shattered any chance he had at love? As he glanced at Sarah, the unspoken conflict surged within him, held back by a thread. Suddenly, every element in Jacob's world crashed together: his daughter's well-being, the startup's future, and a fragile new affection swirling into chaos. Standing at the edge of revelation, he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. Would he summon the courage to confront his past before it barreled back into his present? Jacob's heart raced as he feigned a smile, partially to retain the comforting atmosphere enveloping him and partially to mask his inner turmoil. He glanced at the phone in his hand, the name flashing ominously on the screen like a warning signal. Resolutely denying the rising impulse to answer, he glanced over at Sarah, whose vivaciousness seemed untouched by his spiraling doubts. The moment hung suspended, burdened by unvoiced truths and the weight of expectations. "I'm sorry, I just need to step outside for a moment," he excused himself, maintaining a fragile facade. As he walked out, the cool air hit him like a wave, a stark contrast to the warmth he had just escaped. Jacob's thoughts tumbled chaotically: his responsibilities at work, the legal battles that threatened to drain his focus, and the guilt of leaving Lily alone at home. Could he really balance all these demands? He had poured his heart and soul into the startup, but what was success without personal fulfillment? The muffled sounds of the cafe faded behind him as he leaned against the building's exterior, trying to clear his mind. The legal drama surrounding his ex-wife's claim to a share of the startup darted in and out of his conscious thoughts, tethering him back to past betrayals. His mind raced through the possible implications. Would he lose his company? Would he fail as a father? And what about Sarah? The glimpse of connection they had shared now felt fragile, like a soap bubble ready to burst at the slightest touch. His instincts urged him to retreat once more, to seal himself off, but something deeper began to stir. Past experiences had crafted thick walls around his heart, but was that really the answer? What could he achieve if he let down his guard, if he allowed vulnerability to take its place? Wasn't personal growth built upon facing those fears instead of running from them? Pulses of determination rushed through him. Jacob realized he wouldn't achieve anything by holding on to emotional crutches or avoiding risks. Sarah deserved honesty, a moment of sincerity that might change the trajectory of their evening and maybe even his life. With trembling hands, he answered the call. "Hello?" The lawyer's clipped voice echoed through the line, delivering technical jargon that felt foreign and insurmountable. Despite the stress threading through his veins, Jacob felt a flicker of clarity. The conversation shifted as he acknowledged the facts, the partnership agreements, potential settlements, and the need to confront the complexities surrounding his ex-wife. This was his reality, but he also wielded the power to pivot. He hung up with a mix of frustration and urgency. The drive to confront these issues fueled a determination he hadn't felt in months. Striding back into the cafe, he resolved to share with Sarah the truth behind his guarded demeanor. "I'm sorry for stepping away," he began, taking a seat across from her, openness radiating from him. "I've been wrestling with some personal challenges." His pulse thudded in his ears, vulnerability looming large, yet it felt more liberating than terrifying. "I'd like to share what's weighing me down, if you're open to it," he continued, steeling himself against judgment, daring to share the hardest parts of himself with someone who had ignited a spark of hope amidst his shadows. As he spoke, he could see an understanding developing in her eyes, a mirroring of his own struggles. But just as he felt the first glimmer of connection breaking through, the air abruptly shifted once again. A familiar figure entered the cafe, unmistakable and unwelcome, sending a chill racing down his spine. Would this intrusion derail the sincere connection he was finally cultivating? The past hadn't given up yet, and as Jacob's heart pounded in response to the figure now watching him, he realized the stakes were suddenly much higher. Would he face this challenge head-on, or retreat once again behind the walls he had fought so hard to dismantle? Jacob's heart sank as he identified the silhouette taking hesitant steps toward him. Tom, his former business partner, the man who had once been a close confidant, was now an emblem of betrayal. The cafe's intimate ambience faded into a distant echo as the weight of uncertainty settled onto Jacob's shoulders. Tableware clinked around them, but all he could focus on was the glimmer of mischief in Tom's eyes. "Fancy seeing you here," Tom drawled, the sarcasm dripping like venom. His tone was casual, but there was an undercurrent of menace that snapped Jacob back into caution. "Tom, what are you doing here?" Jacob's voice came out steadier than he felt. It was a facade built from survival instinct, layers of practiced professionalism wrapping around his underlying fear. "I could ask the same. But let us keep it light, shall we?" "Heard you've been busy with the startup," Tom replied, his smile chilling instead of warm. Jacob felt the urge to share his current challenges with Sarah evaporate, replaced by an urgent need to defend what he'd built. "Working hard pays off," Jacob retorted, more proud than defensive, but it wasn't just the startup at stake anymore. Everything had shifted since their bitter parting, and Jacob had held on to every shard of control he could grasp. Tom stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You know, some might say it's a little too ambitious, don't you think? Me, personally, I wouldn't want to lose everything chasing a dream, not if I had a daughter to think about." The implication hung like thick fog between them. Jacob clenched his jaw, biting back the storm of emotions raging within. His hands squeezed the table's edge, grounding him against the agitation spiraling inside. "Listen, just because you took the easy way out doesn't mean I will," Jacob countered, his tone sharpening. "I'll figure this out even if it's hard." Tom chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. "Good luck with that. You might want to check your paperwork, there are pitfalls you may not see coming. Not everything has to be a struggle, Jake. Sometimes it's better to play nice." With that, Tom stepped back, his eyes lingering on Jacob, a predator relishing in his quarry's discomfort. It was then, catching Sarah's questioning glance across the table, that Jacob's resolve hardened. The energy boiling inside him shifted from fear to determination. He sensed that vulnerability wouldn't shield him now, it had to be accompanied by strength. Turning away from Tom, he faced Sarah, who looked both concerned and intrigued. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment, remembering the essence of that spark he had felt just moments ago. "Sarah," he began, his voice even now, "I was just about to tell you about some of the struggles I've been facing. The reality is complicated, more than I let on." He saw recognition bloom in her eyes, the connection reigniting against the backdrop of confusion and tension. Jacob could feel the walls he'd built test their resilience, but he knew he had to stand firm. "I'm navigating some tough situations with my ex, which means my job, my responsibilities as a dad, all of it feels like a balancing act. It's overwhelming. But I refuse to let it defeat me. I owe it to myself, and to Lily, to do better." He was surprised at how easy it felt to admit this, and how much lighter his heart felt sharing not just the struggle, but his commitment to persevere. "But I could use support," Jacob added, his honesty a raw offer. "I don't want to hide behind barriers anymore." Before she could respond, Tom re-entered the fray, an unwelcome interjector in their moment of intimacy. "Careful, Jacob. You never know who's listening." The threat shimmered in the air around them, a reminder that connections were fragile, and every personal commitment was paired with professional risk. Jacob understood in that moment, the stakes were not just high, they were personal, existential. As he confronted Tom's taunt, he was faced with a decision that would test not just his professional acumen, but his values. Would he continue stepping into the light and confront the darkness of his past, or retreat once again fearing the exposure? The choice lay heavy before him, and he felt every heartbeat echoing the challenge, growing in intensity as the next moment of truth approached. Jacob felt the heat rising in his chest, the tension between him and Tom crackling like electricity. The weight of Tom's words clung to him, insidious and threatening. He had managed to carve out a space for himself in the startup world, defying expectations and setbacks, but this confrontation with Tom was a destabilizing force he hadn't anticipated. He turned fully toward Sarah, who watched him with an expression that mixed empathy and curiosity. Her gaze was clear and supportive, a rare light in a world recently shadowed by doubt. Jacob could feel the internal struggle within him, battling the frustration stemming from Tom's taunts with the urge to project strength. "You know, I used to think vulnerability was a weakness," Jacob began, allowing himself to open up, "but this feels different. I'm learning that without it, I risk losing everything." Sarah nodded, encouraging him silently to continue. He swallowed hard, pushing through the unease. "When I started the company, I believed all I needed was the right idea, turning passion into profit. But that notion is simplistic. The reality is everything is interwoven, my role as a father, my prior failures, and if I'm being honest, the fear of making the same mistakes again." As he spoke, he felt a weight begin to lift. Each word seemed to peel back layers of self-doubt, making room for deeper understanding. He acknowledged the fears that had simmered beneath the surface. They were no longer abstract shapes lurking in the shadows of his thoughts. Naming them defeated the power they held over him. "Sometimes I wonder if ambition blinds me," he admitted, looking at Sarah with a new clarity. "I chase success, and in doing so, I might lose sight of what truly matters. Balancing it all seems impossible." Jacob, she interjected gently, ambition is important, but what if you redefine success for yourself? What if it isn't just about achievement but also about connecting with those you love and nurturing genuine relationships? Her words penetrated deep, stirring something within him, a revelation he hadn't considered in his relentless pursuit of a better life for Lily. To think that success could be measured in connection rather than isolation felt revolutionary. As he contemplated this new framework, Jacob's mind flickered back to Tom's veiled threats. He doesn't understand what I'm building here, he thought bitterly, but also recognized that he needn't allow Tom's insecurities to pollute his aspirations. It was time to take back control of his narrative. "Thank you for listening," he said, realizing how genuine support changed the dynamics of fear. "It's just I've felt the walls closing in, you know? I thought keeping things close to my chest would save me from hurt, but I think it's only made things worse." "That's a brave admission," Sarah replied, a smile touching her lips. "It's okay to need others, Jacob. Celebrating your victories with someone, sharing your burdens, that's a part of being human." He felt encouraged by her perspective, and with each beat of his heart, Jacob recognized he was no longer just a reactive player in his own story. He was choosing to shape it, more decisively with every thought he spoke aloud. Then an unsettling idea struck him: if he was to step forward, he needed to confront Tom once and for all, not just for himself but for Lily too. The emotional independence he sought had to expand beyond this cafe, beyond casual interactions with Sarah. It had to encompass every area of his life. He looked across the table at Sarah, her expression a mixture of empathy and insight. "You're right. I can't just be a lone wolf anymore. I need to reach out, seek advice, rally support, not just from friends but also mentors, allies, even from the very people I've kept away." With that realization, Jacob felt the anticipation of change stirring within him. This was more than a small step, it was a commitment toward transformation, a shift from isolation into authenticity. "Tom's not going to dictate my next move," he resolved, a steely determination pooling in his gut. "I have to connect with others who understand this journey, leverage every resource I can find." As the clock on the wall ticked, a sudden thought ignited his motivation. Would his courage to embrace vulnerability reveal undiscovered paths for his professional growth? Or would it open doors he feared to step through? In that moment of revelation, Jacob knew his confrontation with Tom was inevitable. The stakes were high, and the path ahead was both uncertain and exhilarating. Would he have the courage to face his past and emerge stronger, or would it extinguish the progress he had built? The tension in the air felt electric, pregnant with possibilities, as his journey into vulnerability began. Jacob inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of commitment settle over him. It was time to face Tom, and reclaim his own narrative. The moment of truth had arrived, and as the stakes rose, he understood it wouldn't just be about business, it would define his very essence, father and leader. Jacob's mind raced as he exited the cafe, its cozy ambience left behind like an old coat he was shedding. The brisk air hit him with a fresh intensity, mirroring the storm within. He felt alive yet apprehensive, the weight of what he needed to do energizing his resolve. As he strolled through the streets, steely determination began to drown out the self-doubt that had plagued him for far too long. He replayed Sarah's words in his head. Redefining success, what did that truly mean for him? He realized that while his company was vital to his professional identity, the man behind the brand also needed attention. His relationship with Lily hinged on not just being a provider, but an active participant in her life, effectively merging the facets of being a father and a leader. His footfalls echoed against the pavement, a steady rhythm punctuating his thoughts. Each step felt like a pledge to himself, a commitment to the vulnerability that lay ahead when confronting Tom. This wasn't mere bravado, it was critical. Tom's threats loomed like a shadow over Jacob's vision of success. He could no longer allow another's fears to dictate his future. The fluorescent lights of his office building glowed faintly in the distance, standing as a metaphor for the clarity he sought to achieve. What if he took the audacious step to invite the team into this transformation? Could embracing vulnerability within his organization foster an environment of collaboration and trust? As the doors opened, Jacob stepped into the brightly lit space. The air buzzed with the low hum of conversations, punctuated by laughter and brainstorming, a stark contrast to the solitude he had often found himself in. He caught sight of some of his team gathered around the communal table, enthusiasm radiating from them. In that moment, a sudden impulse gripped him. It was time to share his journey, his fears, but also his aspirations. "Hey team, can we gather for a moment?" he called, his voice slicing through the ambient noise. They turned, curiosity knitting their brows. Jacob felt the heat creep up his neck but pressed on. He gestured for them to sit, feeling the weight of their attention settle on him. "I want to talk about change," he began, each word coming heavier with the knowledge of his shift. "I'm realizing that success shouldn't just be about what we achieve but how we connect and grow together. I've let fear shape my decisions for too long, and it's time to open up." He felt the room shift as he shared his struggles with Tom and the fears that had lingered like a specter over his endeavors. The vulnerability in his voice was palpable, a source of empowerment rather than weakness. Faces in the room softened, and he could see seeds of understanding take root. "I want to create a culture where we lean on each other, where we feel safe to share both our triumphs and our setbacks." A murmur of agreement floated through the crowd, and their faces reflected optimism. As he wrapped up his thoughts, a surge of exhilaration filled him. He could feel the barriers between him and his team dissolve. They were no longer just colleagues churning out tasks but individuals united by shared challenges and ambitions. The fear that once stifled him now transformed into collaborative hope. With a newfound boldness, Jacob outlined his idea of a transparent communication strategy where everyone would have a chance to voice concerns and share insights regularly. Instead of the traditional hierarchical structure, he envisioned a more inclusive approach to leadership, and trust blossomed from that authentic engagement. He stepped down from the makeshift platform, his heart racing with energy. He felt connected to his team in a way he hadn't experienced before, yet knew this was merely the beginning. They were invigorated, hungry for this new chapter. But he also sensed another challenge looming. Tom wouldn't step aside quietly. As the meeting ended, Jacob's mind drifted back to the confrontation he had yet to face. How could he tackle Tom's deeply entrenched belief that winning was everything? The thought tugged at him, igniting both anxiety and thrill. The moment to stand up to Tom was approaching, and the stakes were escalating. Would Jacob be ready to confront not just Tom but the adversities lurking within himself? With each heartbeat echoing in his ears, he recognized he was not merely fighting for his company anymore. He was fighting for his identity, the kind of father he wanted to be, and the leader he aspired to become. The next confrontation loomed large, waiting just around the corner, and in that sense of urgency, Jacob felt the flicker of possibility ignite once more. It was time to face his antagonist and solidify his existence as not just a father but a force in this relentless world. How would he navigate the inevitable clash that awaited him with Tom? Jacob's heart raced as he wrapped up the meeting, the energy in the room still crackling around him. His team had been receptive not just to his ideas but to his vulnerabilities. Yet, amidst the optimism, doubt clawed at him, whispering reminders of the confrontation with Tom that loomed ahead like a thunderhead. He stepped into his office, the door clicking shut behind him as he leaned against it for a moment. The walls began to press in, the familiar clutter of papers and reminders becoming suffocating in the aftermath of fresh optimism. In this sanctuary, he had conquered fears publicly, but privately, looming shadows of self-doubt threatened to spill over. How will I sustain this momentum? He pondered, running a hand through his hair. The need for a plan was pressing. Jacob pulled open a drawer, revealing a notepad, its pages filled with frenzied scrawlings of thoughts and strategies. Paradoxically, the notes offered clarity amidst chaos. He had known the truth of his leadership evolution before even admitting it aloud. He jotted down 3 core elements: communication, trust, and resilience. With these principles in mind, he contemplated how to tackle Tom, a figure rooted deeply in a cutthroat mentality. Tom wasn't just a rival, he represented the old version of Jacob, the fear-driven leader who equated success with domination. Confronting him meant stepping into clear waters, raising the stakes but also shining a light on the darkness. Could confronting Tom catalyze broader change, even if it meant risking everything? The tears that had blurred the lines of his past perspective began to dissipate, replaced by a growing tide of resolve. Then came the reflections on being a father. The pressure of guiding Lily in this transitional phase weighed heavily upon him. He recognized that a shift in professional philosophy might be mirrored in his personal life. What example would he set for her if he timidly avoided conflict? With each stroke of the pen, Jacob began crafting a dialogue, first for the encounter with Tom and then another for Lily. A plan was forming, and so was the courage to face each individual foe. Rather than viewing confrontation as combat, it could potentially lead to understanding. He sat back, letting a sigh escape his lips. The office seemed less daunting now, filled with the potential of a new narrative, the narrative he would write. He switched to his phone, composition unfolding into a text directed at Lily. "Can we talk tonight? I'd love to hear about your day, and I have something that's been on my mind too." Hitting send, a ripple of anxiety coursed through him. What he had always thought of as fear transformed into anticipation. His role as a father was as critical as that of a CEO. They were both intertwined, leading him on a path where he would navigate uncharted territory. Tonight, he'd not only share his career journey but open the door for deeper conversations. As the clock ticked closer to the end of the workday, Jacob felt invigorated. Facing Tom was inevitable, but embracing the forthcoming discussions with Lily offered a dual-purpose opportunity, the chance to unearth understanding in both environments. The evening held promise, yet the unease remained. Could he truly bridge the gap between his dual labels, father and leader? Would his newfound principles hold when challenged? In the depths of his internal turmoil, Jacob found himself anew. He would confront Tom, not just for the sake of the company, but as a reflection of all he was striving to instill in Lily. It was an encounter that would define not just the present, but the framework of perseverance and integrity he desired for his daughter. As the office emptied, Jacob steeled himself. The time was now to put theory into practice. Leadership was not isolated, it was personal and visceral. The door was opening to a new chapter. How would he perform on the precipice of transformation, standing resolute against Tom? Each choice he made would shape more than a company, it would shape the legacy he would leave for Lily. Tonight would be the beginning of that crucial change, and Jacob couldn't shake the notion something monumental was about to shift. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow through Jacob's office window as he stared at the screen in front of him, where a blank document waited for his thoughts. The evening loomed ahead, filled with potential conversations that could pivot the course of both his personal and professional lives. Each moment felt weighted with importance as he contemplated his dual-role, leader and father. Lily's text came through, brightening the screen. "Sure, Dad. I'm excited to catch up." A wave of warmth washed over him. His daughter's enthusiasm countered the chill of uncertainty that had defined his day. It was a reminder that communication bred connection, a principle he needed to carry forth in every aspect of his life. He took a deep breath, trying to push aside the looming confrontation with Tom. That meeting felt insurmountable, but today's success had revealed something deeper within, an ability to inspire others by simply being authentic. It dawned on Jacob that this was not merely another corporate confrontation, it was a chance to model vulnerability and integrity for Lily, to demonstrate that standing firm does not imply a lack of compassion. The minutes stretched, ticking like the seconds of a countdown, and he finally decided it was time to put his plans into action. He rose from his desk and ventured out of his office, his purpose clear. The hall stretched ahead, echoing with the footsteps of colleagues, but he had more than logistics on his mind. He needed to reach out to those willing to support him, allies who would lend their strengths as he moved toward both encounters. Jacob approached Sarah from sales, who had once struggled under the weight of Tom's ruthless technique. She was a rising star, and Jacob sensed an alliance could provide him not just reassurance but insight into navigating the storm ahead. "Sarah, can we chat for a moment?" he asked, his tone inviting yet urgent. Their conversation flowed, with Jacob articulating his vision for the company, a landmark shift towards creativity and collaboration. There was an electric current in the air as Sarah shared her thoughts, her enthusiasm igniting Jacob's spirit. He realized this was more than a strategic meeting, it was a clear manifestation of his core principles: communication and trust. Each insight she offered made Jacob feel fortified, and the doubts that had previously tightened around his chest loosened, replaced with a burgeoning sense of hope. After the meeting, he walked to the cafeteria, his head held a little higher. He had shared his vulnerabilities, and it had resonated. But the real test awaited: the conversation with Tom. He envisioned their interaction, dissecting the dynamics with laser focus. The man was formidable, cloaked in the guise of self-assuredness. Yet Jacob had observed something crucial during their past engagements: the cracks in Tom's armor. Beneath the bravado often lay insecurities that could be exploited not through confrontation but through discussion. His phone buzzed again, another message from Lily. "Can't wait to see you." Those words lit a fire within him to reclaim both halves of his life with purpose. That night, Jacob prepared his home for their conversation, optimizing the environment for understanding. He lit a few candles and set the table, an act meant to transform the discussion into something more than just father-daughter chatter. It would be a shared journey, one that fostered open communication. As she arrived, the air was charged with anticipation. He realized with clarity that both Lily and Tom represented different battlegrounds in his life, yet the essence was the same: communication, trust, resilience. That understanding ignited something within him. They sat together, laughter filling the room as the tension pierced the surface. But as Jacob moved toward sharing his day's experiences with Lily, a fleeting shadow of apprehension flickered. Was he capable of bridging the gap between his evolvement as a leader and a father? The question loomed. Tonight was pivotal, for each word spoken could redirect their narrative. He took a moment, weighing the importance of his words. As he began to talk, he understood he was not merely sharing, he was revealing the man he was becoming, a leader shaped by love and lessons. And as their conversation deepened, one thing grew increasingly clear: the impending confrontation with Tom could shift not only his career but redefine his legacy as a father. A move toward transformation was imminent, yet within it lay the uncertainty of whether he would succeed. Jacob placed his hands on the table and inhaled deeply, aware that everything hinged on that interaction. Could he wholly embrace the principles he had prioritized? The clock ticked tirelessly in the background, and just as he was about to share his plans with Lily, a new thought struck him, one that sent a shiver down his spine. What if confronting Tom revealed a hidden truth about himself he wasn't quite ready to face? The soft murmur of conversation and clinking of silverware filled the room, providing a soundtrack to what felt like a defining moment. Jacob glanced at Lily, her spirit radiating innocence and hope. In that flicker of warmth from her eyes, he sensed a profound responsibility to shape her understanding of resilience, vulnerability, and the nuanced dance that defines both personal and professional realms. "Dad, how was your day?" she asked, her curiosity drawing him closer into the moment. The question hung in the air, delicate yet significant. Jacob hesitated, wrestling with whether to share the doubts and fears swirling in his mind, or to cast them aside in favor of a more polished reflection. He inhaled, the candlelight flickering as if echoing his internal struggle. "Well, let's just say I faced some challenges at work," he finally replied, striving for honesty without heavy burdens. "I'm about to meet with Tom, my boss. He can be a tough one." Lily nodded, hanging on his every word. "What do you mean?" Here was the crux: it wasn't merely about navigating office politics but the representation of integrity in his dual role as a father. Jacob gathered his resolve. "Tom has a very different vision for our company, one that's more about structure and less about nurturing creativity. I want to assert that we can achieve better results by being more open and collaborative." Her brow furrowed slightly, a reflection of deep thought. "Is it hard?" It sounds like he wouldn't listen. An unexpected swell of admiration flowed through Jacob. Lily's insight reminded him that leadership was not just about strategy, it was about understanding and standing firm. "It is hard, and sometimes it's daunting. But I have to remember that listening is just as important as speaking." Lily leaned across the table, her voice a whisper filled with urgency. "Then do it, Dad. If you believe in what you're saying, share it." The encouragement in her words ignited something dormant within him, steering the course of his thoughts. It was a reminder that his role extended beyond the boardroom. He was imparting lessons about agency, influence, and moral conviction to her, effectively threading their relationship with the principles he stood for as a leader. As the evening unfolded, they exchanged stories about their respective battles, Jacob with business dilemmas, Lily with the social complexities of high school friendships. There was an expansive depth to their discussion, grounding both of them in the shared reality of navigating challenges. "Sometimes I feel like I need to be perfect to succeed as a leader," Jacob admitted, allowing a peek into his vulnerabilities. He observed Lily's eyebrows arch in surprise, an invitation for elaboration. "But the truth is, I've been learning that being honest about my uncertainties can be my greatest strength." In that moment, he realized how his vulnerabilities had the power to strengthen their bond. As Jacob continued to articulate his thoughts, the fear of confronting Tom morphed into a determination fueled by clarity and purpose. With the conversation winding down, his phone pinged again, this time a corporate reminder for his meeting with Tom. Time was rapidly passing, and each tick of the clock seemed to echo the weight of the decision awaiting him. Jacob stood, a mix of anxiety and exhilaration swirling within him. "Let us not forget this moment, Lily. I promise to approach my meeting with honesty and openness." She smiled brightly, an anchor of encouragement. "Just be you, Dad. Show them how great you are." With renewed energy and a sense of direction, he sauntered toward the door, appreciating the pivotal shift that had occurred within him, transforming his outlook into one of quiet determination. But as he stepped outside, shadowed by uncertainty, a new question prickled his consciousness. Was this newfound courage enough to handle Tom's formidable presence, or would his insecurities resurface once again in the boardroom? The moment of truth awaited just around the corner. The lobby of the office tower was sleek and modern, a reflection of the company's ambition. Jacob stepped inside, his heart pacing in rhythm with the bustling energy that surrounded him. As he approached the elevator, he rehearsed his talking points internally, a blend of heartfelt conviction and strategic rationale. It was a delicate balance, one he hoped to navigate without faltering. His thoughts drifted back to Lily's encouraging words, fueling a spark of resolve. She had reminded him that authenticity was not a weakness, it was an asset. He took a deep breath, exhaling the tension clinging to his chest. The quiet hum of the elevator felt akin to a slow countdown as the doors slid shut. When the doors opened on the executive floor, Jacob stepped out, confronting a world so different from the nurturing home he had been fostering. He smoothed his shirt, straightened his tie, and approached the conference room where Tom awaited. Jacob's palms felt moist against the wood of the conference table, and he noticed scattered documents and a fresh pot of coffee. Each detail was a reminder of the stakes involved in the meeting. Tom was already seated, his sharp gaze fixed on a digital presentation displayed on the wall. As Jacob took his seat, he felt the pressure of expectation loom large. Tom was known for his ability to delegitimize ideas with pointed critiques, often delivered with an intimidating bravado. "Jacob," Tom began, glancing up from the screen, "let us cut to the chase. We need to streamline our processes if we're going to remain competitive." "Absolutely," Jacob replied, feeling a twinge of anxiety. He had prepared for this, yet the words felt sticky on his tongue. "But I believe that with our team's creativity and collaboration, we can approach this differently." In that moment, his mind raced. Tom's reputation for ruthlessness was well earned, yet Jacob remembered Lily's encouragement. This was an opportunity to promote not just a strategy, but a vision aligned with his beliefs about leadership. Tom leaned in, skepticism etching his features. "You think collaboration will solve our productivity issues? Employees rarely have the authority they think they do. We need structure, Jacob." Jacob took a measured breath. The weight of this conversation wasn't solely confined to the corporate stakes, it felt deeply personal. His thoughts flashed to the lessons he had just shared with Lily about the strength found in honesty, in vulnerability. He released a steadier breath. "I'm not saying we abandon structure, Tom. Rather, I propose a structured approach that encouraged input from all levels. Empowering our team might surprise us with the ideas and solutions they have to offer." A silence enveloped the room. Tom's brow furrowed, as if weighing the substance of Jacob's proposal against his own rigid frameworks. Jacob had struck a nerve, but would it resonate or lead to dismissal? For an instant, he questioned if he possessed the authority to challenge Tom, feeling a flicker of that all-too-familiar insecurity. But then he recalled the pride in Lily's eyes, the solidity in her small but powerful belief in him. It made him brave. "I believe fostering an environment of openness and trust not only leads to innovative outcomes but also a more cohesive workforce," Jacob continued, firming his voice. "It's about creating a culture where people thrive, not just survive." Tom exhaled, visibly contemplating the shift in Jacob's demeanor. This was no longer just a report, it was a call to action he hadn't expected. The conversation ebbed and flowed through Jacob's articulations and Tom's punctuating challenges, revealing the essence of not just corporate philosophy, but of resilience under pressure. Each point Jacob made clashed against Tom's traditional views, and he felt the energy in the room charge, an unspoken acknowledgement brewing beneath the surface. As the meeting progressed, Jacob realized that the road to professional achievement was laden with confrontations that tested his vision and resolve. Nevertheless, as he sat across from Tom, an unexpected clarity washed over him. The potential for growth was equally relevant to him as it was to his company. Approaching the end of their discussion, Jacob felt a new kind of strength rooted within him, anchored by a certainty that this was just a beginning. But as Tom paused, contemplating the final thrusts of their dialogue, Jacob sensed an impending conclusion, and with it, the possibility of either rejection or a breakthrough. Would Tom recognize the merit in what Jacob had presented, or would he dismiss it as naive? The weight of anticipation hung between them, fraught with professional tension. Tom leaned back in his chair, eyebrows knitted in contemplation. "I'll admit, your perspective is refreshing," he said, his words laced with cautious curiosity. "But do you really think the team is ready for such a shift? You know, the last thing we need is chaos when deadlines are tight." Jacob felt a swell of confidence rising within him. This was a moment he had envisioned and fought for. "Change can be daunting, but structurally enforced collaboration can push us through. Employees want to feel valued, not fragmented in silos. I believe it's time to prioritize engagement. When people have ownership over their contributions, we may find clarity in our objectives." Tom's silence felt heavy, yet not unwelcoming. For the first time, Jacob sensed an authentic dialogue forming, and something shifted in the atmosphere around them. "Jacob," Tom finally replied, "I can't deny the potential benefits you're articulating. Perhaps we could test this in a smaller team. Evaluate results before rolling it out company-wide. What do you think?" Jacob's heart soared as he absorbed Tom's response. It was an opening, a crack in the armor that once felt impermeable. "Absolutely. A pilot program could provide us with valuable insights," he responded, excitement bubbling beneath his composed exterior. A business agreement began to hum quietly as Tom and Jacob crafted a plan around the principles Jacob had proposed, each detail igniting a sense of purpose. Empowered by the positive energy dismantling that familiar weight of fear, Jacob marveled at what was unfolding, a true conversation fueled by ideas. As the meeting concluded, Jacob felt a shift on multiple levels. He had not just defended his beliefs, he had transformed them into a potential reality. By engaging Tom with honesty, he had forced both men to confront their preconceived notions. "Let us shake on it," Tom said, extending his hand toward Jacob. In that moment, their worlds collided, defining what it meant to legitimize the trust within their professional landscape. Jacob grasped Tom's hand tightly, a gesture laden not only with relief but with newfound respect. Jacob exited the conference room, adrenaline coursing through him. He paused, absent-mindedly leaning against the wall and letting the moment wash over him. The triumph felt monumental. He had faced Tom, sparred with his doubts, and emerged resilient. But it wasn't just about the strategic win, it was about aligning his leadership with a newfound ethos of connection and vulnerability. This moment would reflect in his journey moving forward, not just as a CEO, but as a father shaping his daughter's understanding of resilience. With renewed energy, Jacob pulled out his phone, eager to tell Lily the news. "Hey, I just had a productive meeting and it looks like we have a plan in place to open things up." "Yay, Dad!" came the enthusiastic response from Lily. "I'm so proud of you. You did it." Reflecting on her words, Jacob felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, the realization that his efforts were shaping his life and relationships in ways he had long yearned for. The connection they now shared flared anew, and he felt a profound commitment to uphold those values. Later that evening, as they sat on the sofa, Jacob took a moment to ensure their weekly father-daughter movie night carried significance. "Lily," he began, turning toward her, "I want you to know something important. I learned a lot today about courage and communication. I want to encourage you always to speak up, share your ideas, and never shy away from what you believe. You bring so much to the table." Lily's eyes sparkled with understanding, illuminating her excitement. "I will, Dad. Just like you did with Tom." That moment was an anchor for Jacob, a reminder that personal fulfillment stemmed from investing in both professional and familial relationships. He realized his growth was reciprocal, each lesson learned from one aspect illuminated the others. As the credits rolled on their chosen film, Jacob felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him, a lasting satisfaction simmering below the surface. He had not only conquered obstacles but cultivated a deeper connection with Lily, a true parallel to his evolving role as a leader. That night, Jacob fell asleep with the comforting knowledge that triumph doesn't simply arise from winning battles, it sprouts from embracing vulnerabilities and fostering connections with those that matter most. His journey had transformed not just his company but his realm of possibilities and the legacy he would leave behind. The convergence of both personal and professional worlds finally felt aligned, and he stood on the precipice of a promising future, invigorated by the understanding that success is not merely what one achieves but how deeply one connects. For each obstacle faced and every doubt dispelled led to the same truth: vulnerability was not a liability, it was the secret ingredient to true achievement. And this was how Jacob would forever define his journey, as a pursuit of balance, courage, and connection, where growth blossomed like wildflowers in a bright, open field. Now was the moment for others to witness this transformation. It was time for you to join him on this inspiring journey that celebrates the overcoming of personal conflicts and the pursuit of authentic professional relationships. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support moments of genuine transformation. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending and share in-depth reflections on your own journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because, by doing so, you're spreading a message of resilience and connection that truly matters. Don't wait even one more second to share your thoughts and support.